I'm on, good.
Yeah, I see you. Give me a sec here.
Yeah, really. Do you want to wrap it to him? I'll put a little bit of my regular coffee. You need that one right there? Yeah, I just added a little bit to my coffee. Are we ready? You sure you don't want to?
Chris, did you get a notice that you've been made host?
Excuse me, sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Tom.
Sure where to look for that.
For participants, it'll show you the list and it'll show you your host.
Should be online somewhere. It says you're the host right now
Yeah, sure
on my
does.
list of participants.
There you go.
Let me make somebody else co-host. Maybe Gus.
Gus
just
is not here.
back up.
Gus isn't
He's
here. He's online, but he's not here. Okay, we'll talk about this. That's what you know.
All right. Well, anyway, Chris, it's your show now. I'm no longer host, so I can't do anything.
Make me co-host if you would, if you can.
Chris has to do that. I no longer
Oh,
can because
okay.
I made him.
So are we ready? Okay. Are we recording?
Too many requests.
That's for Greg. Greg needs to be recording.
Yeah, he gave us away, so Chris can do it.
The more.
I'm gonna do it.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So, welcome to the regular meeting of the Midcoast Community Council for February 26, 2025. Connie, could you call the roll, please?
Happy to. Chris Rogers,
Here.
Kevin.
I'm here.
Pronounce your last name, Kevin.
Snishinsky. Kevin S. is totally fine.
Kevin S.
Yes.
Claire,
Here.
Kimberly,
Yes, here.
Scott.
Here.
Connie, still here, Gus.
I'm here, but I'm in Portland for a business trip. So I would need you guys to vote to allow me to participate as a full voting
Okay,
member.
Do I hear a motion to allow Gus to participate as a member?
Motion.
Guess one more.
I second, if that's what you need. Okay, any debate? Connie, could you call the roll on that, please?
Certainly. Chris,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes,
Connie, yes.
okay.
Thanks, guys.
Now, before we get into the actual agenda, the agenda is a legal document, and once we post it, we're pretty much obligated to follow it unless we decide otherwise. Because we do reserve the right to change the agenda, to amend the agenda. Is that me? I don't think it is. I'm not even.
If you go to my, see who's doing it.
Okay. I am going to move that we delete 2 items from tonight's agenda. The items 6B and 6C. The reason being that I'm waiting for a complete stormwater report before we take any action on it. So I'm going to make a motion that we delete those 2 items for tonight and postpone them for a later meeting. Is there a second for that? I second the motion. Any discussion? Could you call the roll on that, please, Connie?
Yes. Chris,
You should probably allow, yes.
Oh, anybody in the public wants to make a comment on that?
I did.
Yes, Greg.
I just wanted to know, would the council like me to update them on the progress since the last meeting at this time or some other time since the approval agenda item is removed?
I personally would like to see the entire report presented to us, but other people may have other ideas. I would like to see the full report. Any other,
No, I'm okay with that. I'll go, I would like to see the full report also.
any other comments from the public?
Joe Grant has her hand up.
Okay, I can't see that. So Joe, please.
Thanks, Claire. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, my public comment is regarding the Harbor District.
Oh,
So,
wait a minute. No. This is just comment on whether we're going to change the agenda.
oh, sorry. I don't have
We'll
a.
get to you, we'll
on
get
that.
to you in a bit.
Okay,
Okay. So, kind of get you call the roll on that, please?
Yes. Chris,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Ronnie, yes.
Okay, thank you. So now, Board of Supervisors report is Marisol or any other representative here? I saw Marisol.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's good to see you. So I only have 2 items to report on tonight. The first one is that the Office of Supervisor Ray Mueller is reaching out to, to Caltrans and also contacting legislators regarding the easement that runs through and up in Moss Beach to mitigate the issue, being that it's part of a land owned by Caltrans that hasn't been maintained. So we don't want that to be any potential of a wildfire risk. The other announcement is that our office has also sent a letter to Samtrans asking for expansion of Ride Plus to the coast. And we've mentioned as well some of the concerns that had been raised to our office in the past. So on the first item, just so you know, it's not part of my portfolio, so I don't have any more details, but this is what I just wanted to share with all of you.
Thank you, Marisol. Are there any
Sure.
questions for Marisol from the public? Any questions for Marisol from the council? Kimberly?
I'm a little confused. So on the first item, oh, sorry, on the first item, are you talking about the bypass?
I was informed it's the easement that runs through and up in Moss Beach.
It's only Moss Beach?
There isn't.
That's-
It's
That's all I have. So if there's any other part of that territory that you want to know about, I'd have to check in.
I
My
guess,
guess is that it's probably that territory that used to belong to Caltrans that's in the back of Montera.
That hasn't been maintained.
A fire hazard too.
yeah, I think we need clarity on what you're actually, what piece
What part of it?
land you're talking about, because I think the area that you mentioned is not the right area.
Okay, let me check in. Again, this is not part of my portfolio, but I'll check in again and then I'll send you guys an updated response via email to confirm if it is what I mentioned or something different. But I see 2 hands on the screen here.
Yeah, other questions from the council for Marisol?
So Greg must have a comment with respect to that, right?
We
Yeah.
got an email about this thing. So, I mean, I assume Greg's about to tell us, summarize that email for us.
If I may,
Yes, please.
I just attended a meeting of the steering committee of a group called Red Alert Montera Moss Beach that was founded by Larry DeYoung. And Marisol, you beat me to it. I was going to write you and Ray and the staff with all the materials about what has been called the Martini Creek bypass owned by Caltrans and not maintained.
Did you
There's
say
an article in the half?
Sorry, Greg, did you say Martini?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I'll
Okay.
put it in writing. I'll do it first thing in the morning. There's a Half Moon Bay Review article written on this. There was a press release put out by the group. And I thought I might have mentioned this at a prior MCC meeting. I think down the road, we would like to support the MCC in this effort as well as other elected members. So yeah, that's the area with all the eucalyptus that's extremely hazardous, and I'll skip the details, but thank you, and Ray, for anticipating or hearing about this otherwise. And I will send you the information you're looking for.
Thank you.
Are there additional hands up?
I see another hand up, Claire, Coach.
Jill has her hand up. But Jill's.
Carl May, Moss Beach. That is not the Martini Creek bypass. That is the adopted alignment of the original bypass that Caltrans had. The Martini Creek bypass then came down Martini Creek and crossed the fields and came out north of, I don't even know the name of the restaurant now, but that is not the Martini Creek bypass. It's the adopted alignment.
Thank you. Sounds like we need to get to the bottom of it.
There's
Jill, were you going to comment on this?
I have a question for our supervisor's representative, if this is the right.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So there's a Measure A going on right now, and I believe it goes until March 4th, and then voting stops. Can you explain what will happen after Measure A either passes or doesn't pass? What are the next steps?
Jill, thank you for the question. However, I'm not allowed to answer that question. If you want to know those exact details, I would suggest that you contact the Office of the County Council, and I can put the number in the chat, and they will provide you with further information.
Are there further questions for Marisol?
So then what does it mean if we vote yes or if we vote no? What does that mean to community?
Can't answer that.
Again, I'm not allowed to answer your question, but thank you for asking. I can provide County Council's information so you could contact them.
I believe Lisa has her hand up.
Yes, I posted this on the chat. There's a webpage on the MCC website called Caltrans Devil Slide Bypass Alignment. There's a map there. There's correspondence of previous efforts to deal with it, and it is covered in LCP Policy 11.33, which is part of the 2012 update, and you should read that when you
Recording in progress.
unrelated current efforts to deal with the fire danger, anything they're calling it or what they're trying to do, you need to check with this policy because the general public is not aware of this, and it's up to the MCC to keep this history alive so that we don't waste time on it. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Once again, everything's on the website. We just need to look at it. Anything else for Marisol? Okay, is there any other representative from any other government body here that wants to speak? Okay, if not, let's see. Do you have the agenda up? We need a technical consultant really bad.
Next is council follow-up.
Okay, council follow-ups is really designed for if you're working on a project that you want to give an interim report on. That's where we do it. Right now, we don't have anything like that, I don't think. Everything we need to talk about is going to come under council activity. So the next thing is public comment, right? Oh,
Yes.
Thank you. Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 speaker slips and probably some people online too. But let's start with Karen Wilson for 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, please.
All right, Dan, go ahead. 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening, council members. I'm gonna try to be quick, but this is a bit comprehensive. I hope not to go over much more. So good evening, this is Dan Haggerty, El Granada, former MCC member for 13 years. In 2011, when I first ran for my MCC seat, I campaigned heavily for the multimodal parallel trail to be continued from Half Moon Bay throughout the Midcoast. The Midcoast voters responded, giving me the largest numbers of votes in November 2011. The community voted to have an off highway class 1 trail and not the on highway class 2 bike lanes. As a result of these bike lanes, it's bringing in, I'd like to now give you attention to the proposal for the Harbor District parking lot on the North Burnham Strip. There were 9 people at the last Harbor District Board meeting asking to pause actions until there can be a broad community outreach to bring awareness and get feedback from the community regarding its wide range of impacts to our community and all the users of Highway 1. A week ago, a little after 12 p.m., while the majority of the community were busy working and unable to attend, the Harbor District Commission voted to issue a request for proposal for the design, engineering, and permitting of the parking lot. This item has not even been brought to the MCC discussion. We deal with those. It's distracting over there. Maybe you-
But
maybe by community.
next weekend or something, we could.
So I have several strong concerns, and I am meeting more and more community members that agree with these concerns.
Excuse me, just a second. Could everybody mute themselves, please?
We're getting some feedback, Coach, Chair Claire.
Yeah, I know. I just asked them to mute themselves.
We are,
Thank you.
Harvey. There you go.
Okay, so I have several strong concerns, and I'm meeting more and more community members that agree with these concerns. The El Granada Gateway zoning of this area does permit Surfers Beach parking. It does not permit Sam's parking, and it does not permit Harbor District parking. An added signalized crosswalk to Sam's will drastically impact traffic for all users of Highway 1, when traffic here already sees backups and brake lights. I don't think we need to make it worse unnecessarily. It will create an increase in points of crash conflicts, all in a very busy and dangerous existing situation. Even with a crossing, there'll be crash conflicts. The historic green space element of berm strip was always meant to be preserved to the greatest degree possible, with the visual and open space characteristics of this property, not to be littered with transformers, light poles, car chargers, and many signs. It's currently a wildlife feeding habitat for hawks, the great blue heron, and other local wildlife, as well as being a protected scenic view corridor. It is not fair to the community that this area should be so greatly and recklessly impacted as a result of a call for more parking for Sam's future development north of Sam's, the empty lot north of Sam's, and the Harbor District use. It should not be first. It also calls for a replace of lost parking at Surfers Beach by Coastal Commission, but it's not close to the Surfers Beach. Alternatively, there are many other options that could provide parking closer to the attraction of Surfers Beach. Last item. What needs to happen first is the county take the lead of creating a master plan for the whole area near Surfers Beach. This needs to happen to counter the projects which are being piecemealed and don't make the best sense for the majority. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Karen?
Hi, my name is Karen Wilson. I also am a board member of the MCC, and I served as chair when we got the tunnel approved. So I'd like to just take a moment and thank all of you for your service. I know how much it takes and how much hard work it is. I do need to address 2 topics. First, I'd like to, I read Dan's, what he commented on, and I just wanted to add a couple of things because I absolutely want to repeat what he said. Another concern would be all of the families who have children on the coastside that go to schools from Montera to Half Moon Bay, sporting events, birthday parties, weekend traffic is already a nightmare. Those further delays for single parents, especially, should not be occurring. That land should be preserved as a view corridor. We don't need big lights like the fire station glowing up the entire neighborhood for the people in El Granada. It's a tragedy, and whatever can be done to halt the Harbor District from moving forward with wasteful money for a plan that shouldn't occur. I'm hoping there's something you can do to send a letter with the Board of Supervisors, some kind of coordination to halt this right away. I'm sorry, I'm not used to this. Weekend events, view corridor. Okay, so pretty much I agree with Dan. The second part is I came here regarding the stormwater report. I'm not part of it. I recently became aware of it. And through this, I'd like to just briefly tell you and hope that I don't cry. I've been a resident of Montera for 33 years. I own one of the oldest homes in Montera. When I bought my home, it had one sump pump underneath the ground. There were no houses behind me, none to the north. Every house in Montera has a sump pump that drains to the street to eliminate water. In around 2007, the water moratorium was lifted and 2 houses were built next to me. That water migrates to my property. In about 2017, 2 more additional homes were built behind me. I now have a raging river every time it rains coming through my property. I have to manage it. I have $300 a month PG&E bills. I have to buy new sump pumps every year. And the county now wants me to put a lake on my property to retain my neighbor's water that is trespassing on my property. It's not my water. My property has been fined for 33 years and it was built in 1920 and was fined. This is obscene. And I hope that some of this can be included, but I truly fear retaliation from the county. I have no idea why I can't move that water to the street. They should even be paying for it. It was their lack of designing of those homes and those drainage plans that engineers have told me and lawyers have told me do not work the way they collect their stormwater because they're uphill from me. I'm also in an area where the lots are 125 feet deep. So plus the street isn't maintained. I have to move that water 80 something feet to the street right now. And I should not be required to create a wetlands habitat on my property with mosquitoes. I have mountain lions that come down the street. There's dozens of children that live across the street. Bird flu's coming. I don't need 6 months of a swamp and I shouldn't have to maintain that. I needed to vent that. I'm sorry, but this is destroying my life. I'm disabled, I'm getting older and I can't do this. I don't have the kind of money that most of these people moving here have. So I sincerely hope that some of this can be addressed. And I'm going to provide further information if you're interested.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, we'll go to the online people, starting with Jill Grant and followed by Steve Terry for 3 minutes, please. Jill.
Thanks, Claire. My name's Jill Grant. I'm on GCSD, but I'm speaking as a private citizen, a resident of El Granada. At 10 a.m. on Wednesday, February 19th, the San Mateo County Harbor District Board held their monthly public meeting. On the meeting agenda was an item to create overflow parking for Pillar Point Harbor, with General Manager Jim Pruitt recommending board authorization to issue a request for proposal, an RFP, for the design, engineering, and permitting to construct an overflow parking lot on the Burnham Strip. It would be constructed on privately owned parcels and parcels owned by the Harbor District, Caltrans, and San Mateo County. The paving of the Burnham Strip open space is the part of the strip that currently exists between Sam's Chowder House and Highway 1 on the west side and Avenue Alhambra across from Spangler's Market and the Indian Beach Restaurant on the east side. It's in between Deer Creek and that house. This new parking lot is in response to a California Coastal Commission coastal development permit approval requirement to create 75 free public parking spaces lost from Caltrans construction of 2 bike lanes adjacent to Highway 1 at Surfers Beach. But most of the community MCC serves had no idea this was being proposed. In typical Harbor District fashion, their one monthly meeting was held at a time when most of the community could not attend, 10 a.m. on a weekday. The Harbor District further suppressed the community's right to comment by only allowing the public to verbally comment in person. Written comments by email were received, but they were not read in their entirety. Instead, President Catherine Slater Carter used her own bias to condense the emailed comments into a sentence or 2. I would like to request that the MCC write a letter to the Harbor District asking them to change their monthly meeting time to a time that is outside regular work hours so the community can participate in their meetings. Secondly, I feel like this parking plan is being snuck under the radar of the community, and I would like the Harbor District to come to the MCC meeting and explain why the Harbor District is solving a Caltrans problem after the CCC approved this CDP with the requirement that Caltrans provide 75 free parking spaces, a decision in response to appeal by Lynn Erickson and Catherine Slater Carter. Why is the Harbor District planning on this parking area and now soliciting funds from PG&E to use it for staging and Caltrans to meet their requirement? And if they do need more parking and they want to help out, why doesn't the Harbor District consider using the old parking lot, the existing Keatnerham RV park? That's where we had free public parking. That's the original purpose. It's the most logical spot for a parking lot. The parking in the spaces that are lost on Highway 1 are used by fisher people, people that fish off the jetty, people walking the rec trail, people playing on Surfers Beach. It's the most logical place for the required 75 spaces. And I would very much appreciate if the MCC could point this out to the Harbor District. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Just to let people know, the Harbor District is scheduled to be at our next meeting. Steve, then followed by Jane.
Yes, hi, Steve Terry, El Granada. I don't have prepared notes, so I'll just kind of ramble like I usually do. I also want to speak about the Harbor District, and I think Dan's comments and Karen and Jill's comments were really good, so I'll try to supplement those comments. It appears to me, I'm just kind of coming up to speed on this, but it appears to me that, well, maybe to have a different understanding of what Jill said, Caltrans is not required to come up with replaced parking, but to work with local agencies to come up with a replacement for the estimated 75 spaces lost along one to put in the bike lanes. So Harbor District has kind of stepped up, and they've sort of taken a de facto lead role in this and bought some property, and now they're proposing these lots, which may be good, may be bad. I think it lacks community input, and that's kind of what we're all saying. We'd like to have community input before you put out an RFP, which they did. They authorized the payment to put together an RFP for the lot, and I think that just addresses the north end of that stretch of Highway 1, which addresses the Sam's overflow parking and addresses Harbor District overflow parking, but it doesn't address the southern end of the strip, which is the surfers and beachgoers overflow. And if the Harbor District parking lot is the only thing that's mitigating the parking loss, then the surfers are going to end up parking up around Wilkinson School and up in El Granada neighborhood. So I don't think that works. And so what I would like to see, really my bottom line is, I would like to see MCC take a lead role in this. I think it's the epitome of what your role is in our community, because it involves the whole neighborhood and different agencies. So you're well positioned to sort of take the lead role in this. And that's to kind of put a bug metaphorically in the ear of the county representative as well. And I hope that you'll do that. There's something else, a couple other things too, is in the staff report, the Coastal Commission staff report, they made a comment about this is temporary anyway. All this stuff we're doing is temporary because in half a year, they're going to come out with a report of potential realignment of Highway 1 along Surfers Beach. So a lot of this might be ripped up anyway. And so maybe it's too early to talk about mitigating parking loss or even to put in bike lanes. Why are we doing it if we're going to realign Highway 1? So that's one big factor that I'm trying to understand. And the other one is that there's Caltrans right away between GCSD's development and Highway 1. Maybe GCSD could be a part of this and put some extra parking in their project, which is on Caltrans property, and so won't affect the project they're trying to do. They've indicated, I've heard them indicate they're a community organization. Their job is not to provide parking for the county. I respect that, but if Caltrans can provide some property, maybe they can add that into their project. Those are just some ideas. Thanks very much for your comment. Please take a roll, and I'm glad to hear your next agenda is going to have this on it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Jane, followed by Burnett.
Yes, I also want to talk a little bit about this parking. I went to the Harbor District Board meeting.
Can I
Can
have
you
your
hear
name,
me?
please?
Oh,
Can I have
Jane
your
Prey
name?
Silver. I'm in El Granada since '89. So I hope my dogs don't. One of your previous speakers said that they'd hope they wouldn't cry. And I'm going to tell you what I told the Harbor District, and I literally hope I don't cry when I tell you this. Everybody knows when there is going to be a fire problem, they all say the same thing: go to the harbor. We're all headed to the harbor. But we know that that's the choke point. It's Obispo and Highway 1, where you can't even have a fender bender, and you better be paying attention when you make a left-hand turn, because it's so small of an intersection, you could hit the oncoming traffic. But we can imagine what it's going to be like when the whole coast descends on Obispo. It's going to be cars, and that's some of these houses near me have 5 and 6 cars because of the economy. We've got multi-generational people living there. It's going to be horse trailers, RVs. Some of them won't be working that well. Emergency vehicles, bicyclists, boats, and the pedestrians. Those of us who get caught in the gridlock, who can't make it. I have a wagon and 4 dogs. I won't bring any documents, and I won't bring any photographs. I'm just walking down. And this is a very serious thing. And I think what Dan really hit on is we need a comprehensive study about what this is going to mean for our community. We've seen fire after fire. We've seen the Palisades fire, and they tried to release people in droves so they wouldn't have gridlock. The people in the hills didn't get word early enough, so they didn't have time to get out. If you've known anybody in those fires, you hear that the road is on fire. They're praying their tires don't melt. You know, we have a problem with fire, but we're also caught in this thing where we would like to keep the neighborhood beautiful and wild and worth taking photographs, but we also need to be serious about fire. So I really think that Dan has a brilliant idea that we need a comprehensive study. We don't need to be the next coastal town where letters are sent out to our family that say, "We're so sorry about your mom." We don't want that. And I think it's irresponsible for any coastal town not to take something that's such an obvious problem. When they put in the RV park, we lost a lot of the space that I think horse trailers could have pulled into safely. So this is just more land that's going to be, covered in cars when we get the word it's time to go. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and it's just about the park. The park has been promised to be a community park. When they put this large parking lot there, now we have the community paying for what really is more like a state park. And I think I just want to close by thanking the members of the MCC. I have always felt very safe with all of you in expressing my opinions, and I have felt that you have listened to me with respect. And Claire, I'm so glad you're chairing this meeting, because you in particular have been like that. There's a tendency now not to listen to other people and want to shut them out, and I hope the MCC will stay a place where we all feel comfortable we could come and solicit your support. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jane. Who's something? It's
mine, sir.
Okay. Next is Burnett, followed by Natalie. Burnett Silviera, is that correct?
Silvera. Yeah, it looks
Silveria.
like Silveria, but they don't pronounce the I, so it's Silvera. Burnett Silvera, El Granada. Back to stormwater for a moment. As an update on the flooding stormwater runoff from Quarry Park, the Parks Commission at their recent February 6th meeting, the 3-member commission with 2 vacancies still unfilled and without a vote, but in agreement, finally held that the Quarry Park stormwater runoff problem that we in El Granada have been bringing to their attention for years was a flooding problem and better handled by regional agencies like One Shoreline, and referred us to those agencies. They did not refer us to CRISP because in the prior meeting, we had informed them that Supervisor Mueller was okay with us seeking their help and that it did not conflict with CRISP. They came to this decision in spite of the commission repeatedly being provided photos and videos of the park's dangerous runoff and the El Granada community stressing the flooding danger it poses to our homes and families, reminding them that the runoff originates from a county park under their purview providing them with possible actions that could be undertaken within Quarry Park to reduce the runoff so it doesn't flood us out, like managing the dam's water level to capture runoff during the rainy season when the dam is full and overflowing is when the flooding is at its worst. Informing them that DPW had already partially addressed the problem in the 2018 Cabrillo Avenue drainage project. The common sense that runoff from Quarry Park is a localized problem, not a regional one like seawater rise. And in the prior month's meeting, the present chair and another commissioner had complained about the safety of vehicles exiting from the planned new Tanitas Creek Park and asked the Parks Department to look into that safety issue and what could be done about it. So apparently the commission could not address a documented continuing safety issue at one of its existing parks, but could address an apparent safety issue at a planned new park. They would not even seek.
Can you come to your
wrapping up right now. I think I timed this to 3 minutes, so I should be pretty close. They would not even seek to talk with DPW on what it may be planning or could possibly do to help with the problem. The prior chair, before he termed out last December, had been seeking DPW's help in just this way. Instead, no help came and the flooding danger continues. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Burnett. Next is Natalie Downs, followed by Sid Young.
Hello, MCC board. My name is Natalie Down. I'm a resident of El Granada, and I wanted to add a public comment in concern of the new proposed parking lot on the Burnham Strip and the one that's not associated with the GCSD plan for the park. The harbour proposes to level and concrete over the area of the strip in front of Spangler's and India Beach towards the Press north. My primary concerns are threefold. Firstly, the projected environmental impact from the area includes a riparian area in front at the end of Deer Creek, and that will have a huge impact on the environment in general. And as Dan mentioned, it's a hugely important feeding ground for a lot of birds, and has gophers and hawks and the like. Secondly, the lack of public input into the general proposal, as Jill mentioned. There wasn't any Zoom input. I was at the meeting, but I don't think that the Harbour Commission have an ability to have you comment by Zoom. So lack of public impact input into the general proposal. A fair amount of progress has been made so far on their part in purchasing the land and conversations with Caltrans. The Harbour at their last meeting, against our objections, will be moving forward with a formal proposal before the public are involved. And finally, the plan also intends for an additional crosswalk from the parking lot on the strip directly across the Sams, and adding paid for partially by Sams. Adding this crosswalk will drastically affect the traffic on Highway 1 and draw people into the neighbourhood on Avenue Alhambra to avoid being delayed by an additional crosswalk. The very concept of one private company having this drastic impact on a public project with this much potential traffic disruption is unheard of and will negatively impact the whole coast, especially El Granada. I would urge the MCC board to require a public forum from the harbour before they go further down the head for requests for proposals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Natalie. Next is Sid Young, followed by Carl May.
Thank you. A couple things. I just want to say that I agree with everything that people are saying about the Harbor District. I watched the video, and I can never attend the meeting in the middle of the day like most people, and that limits the public participation, and I think that's by their particular choice. And they do need to have at least one meeting a month, which is in the evening, because they don't give enough notice anyway when they publish their agendas. But they don't allow Zoom participation, and most public meetings do. I attended the fire board meeting today, and they have Zoom participation. So I think that the fact that they only allow in-person public comments or written, and they only read them by synopsis, is ridiculous. And I plan to write something to the grand jury and also to LAFCO. They have a municipal services review pending. The and I don't want them to, they did say in their Zoom meeting that I'm sorry, on the video that I watched, that they have 2 times a year overflow parking that where people coming to harbor events park out on the highway. One is the beginning of crab season or salmon season, I forget which, where people park their boat trailers out on the highway. And the other one is when they have the boat lighting ceremony. But that doesn't really, I think they're really putting that parking lot in for the beach goers and SAM customers. So I don't, I think it's a bad idea. Secondly, I just wanted to say what happened at the fire board meeting real quick for the public. What? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You've got about a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. They announced their weed abatement program. By April 25th, you should have your yards trimmed back, or you'll get a notice. And by May 10th, if you haven't trimmed your weeds, it'll go on your property tax bill, because they'll send somebody out to trim your weeds, especially if you have vacant lots. Because there's still, high awareness about fire danger. And also, they are planning a March 10th tabletop modeling of the evacuation plan that they have produced by AI, but it's a planning tool, and I don't know where they're going to have it, but Dave Cosgrove is the one that announced it. And
Okay.
let's see.
Thank you, Sid. That was helpful.
Yeah, there's one more thing. They do have next month their meeting. They're going to have a whole comprehensive thing about fire. So if you're interested, that's something you might want to do. Their meetings are 4:00 on the same day as the MCC. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's see, we've got Carl May and then Greg Diegues, and then we'll stop, then we'll close public comment. There's nobody else. with their hands up now.
Make a public comment?
No.
No.
Carl May, Moss Beach. Very briefly, you can tie together the stormwater runoff and this parking lot thing that interests so many people, because there's going to be a great deal more paved surface. And one of the big problems with runoff is hardscaping. However, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to harangue you on the thing I harangue you always about, which is the road up Montera Mountain. You'll remember about a month ago, we had a meeting, county parks person was here, and they were embarking on grading the road up Montera Mountain through McNee Ranch, which they went ahead and did, gave all kinds of assurances. Oh yeah, we're going to continue to look at this road and so forth. And they did this with the usual multi-decade failure to look at the condition of that road over time. Well, earlier this month, a week apart, we had 2 good rainstorms. Going up there right after the second rainstorm, all of the supposed advantages of the grading are essentially overcome and gone. In the very worst spots, the very big deep ruts are 1/2 to 3/4 as big and deep as they ever were, and no large fire truck is going to drive over them. In other places, the ruts are every bit as big as they ever were. So all the loose material that was pushed into the ruts washed out in 2 rainstorms. I resent my tax money with whatever agency is doing these roads, going up there again and again, doing the same stupid things. And so the council wrote a good letter, follow-up letter to one that they had previously done. And I just don't want to let this die again. I think we need to keep demanding that the county start paying attention to what's going on with that road up the mountain. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg.
I certainly appreciate Carl May. I didn't know Dan was going to bring this up. I support what he's raising. You may recall it was Catherine Slater Carter filing appeal with the Coastal Commission, and Len Erickson and I submitting letters as individuals in support of it that raised the parking issue on the Surfers Beach Caltrans project. but I agree, this has become a multi-jurisdictional, and I won't use the word, but you know what I'm talking about. Multi-jurisdictional maze, and we really need the county, Marisol, to step in here and try and exert some control so that the right things get sorted out. I would add a piece of new information. The county disclosed to me in my research in the stormwater report, which isn't yet in the draft, that they would hope to reroute Deer Creek along the side of Highway 1 so that it exits on Surfers Beach instead of in the harbor as a part of a sand replenishment thing. So that's one more use of the land in that area that is already so congested. And then finally, I would just suggest that you can see your next 300-page MCC report being on wildfire and evacuation, and I look forward to helping you write it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to everybody for all the input. A lot of serious stuff going on. I appreciate your interest in holding our feet to the fire. We're going to hold your feet to the fire too, because we have to do this together. I have what?
Can we check in with Steve Terry? He's still got his hand up and.
I
just a hang-
close public comment after Greg.
Okay.
Okay. And Steve to get to talk. I have 5 really quick announcements of things that people should know about. I'm not going to go into detail, but if you will need more information, please let me know. The first is the CAL FIRE maps are out for San Mateo County in the Bay Area. I think we will probably be looking further at those maps and what the implications are, but you might want to take a look at them. Second is that there is a program between San Mateo County and Santa Cruz County of stewardship for land management. And they are accepting applications for this. It's a 1 day a week over the summer tour of the various parks and other facilities in the 2 counties with an emphasis on educating people on land management and natural resource management. Sounds like a good thing. Next thing is that El Granada School lighting. There's a meeting on that tomorrow at 6 p.m. and I don't know where. But it's something we've been following and some people may want to attend that. The next thing is I think from the school board, because they're the ones sponsoring it. The next is that there will be a Department of Energy or no, Emergency Affairs meeting on CRISP updates on March 6th at Ray Mueller's office. That'll be a early morning meeting.
Physical site office.
Yeah. And the last thing is that just to let you know that the MCC members have been invited to city government headquarters this next Wednesday for informal meet and greet of county department heads so that we have a little bit more facility in approaching them in the future. So those are my announcements. Next is the consent agenda. There are 2 things on the consent agenda. One is the approval of the minutes of last week, not last week, just seems like it, 2 weeks ago. And the other is the approval of a letter to Samtrans and the Board of Supervisors advocating for the continuation and expansion of the Rides Plus program. As Marisol noted, Ray has sent a letter. He suggested that we send a letter to accompany his. So those are the 2 items on the agenda. Is there any comment on that or any motion to approve it?
I have a comment on the second.
Do you want to pull it?
Yes.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Kevin.
A second?
Second it.
Okay. Connie, could you call the roll on that, please?
Sure. Trying to take too fast. Okay, Chris,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Kevin. Yes. Scott.
Yes.
Gus.
Yes.
Bonnie. Yes.
Okay, so the minutes are approved and we'll address the letter later. The next moving to the regular agenda. The first presentation is on a proposed county stormwater ordinance update. And it's going to be presented by sustainability specialist Sultan Henson. And I believe you're online, correct?
Hi, yes, correct. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sultan Henson. We also have Melissa Ross Perkins here and Sarah Dykey. So they'll be joining me in the presentation as well. And I'm just going to try to share the PowerPoint slides. But I believe I need permission.
Can you make him a co-host?
Moment. There you go.
Oh, great. All right, is that showing up for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna actually hand it over to Melissa to kick us off.
Thanks, Sultan, and thanks everybody for giving us some time on your agenda to share the county stormwater ordinance update. We're going to do this as a small team presentation here for you. My name is Melissa Ross Perkins. I'm one of the program managers in the sustainability department. And like I said, we have Sultan Henson and Sarah Dykey here with me. They're both sustainability specialists that focus on stormwater within the county. So tonight we'd like to provide some background and information on the county stormwater ordinance update. The county is currently updating its ordinance to align with some state mandates, and we've worked with our partners in planning and building, environmental health services, parks, and the Department of Public Works to update the ordinance. We'd like to give you a little bit of background on the draft that we currently have and be happy to hear any questions or comments that you all might have. So with that, the County of San Mateo Stormwater Ordinance is a local regulation for the unincorporated county area that implements a state mandated program to protect and enhance water courses, wetlands, San Francisco Bay, and Pacific Ocean by reducing pollutants and eliminating non-stormwater discharges into the county storm drain system. In most cases, stormwater entering storm drains or along ditches is untreated and can carry pollutants and sediment directly to water courses and water bodies. So the county is subject to the Municipal Regional Stormwater National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, or NPDES, that's issued by the State Water Resources Control Board. And the state board's permit is updated periodically and implemented by region. The San Francisco Bay Regional Permit covers multiple cities, counties, water, and flood control districts within the Bay Area. And the last comprehensive update of the NPDES permit was in May of 2022, and that prompted the stormwater ordinance update. So just to give a little high level on the regulatory structure, the US EPA NPDES program was created in '72 by the Clean Water Act, and it authorizes the EPA to permit and enforce the program. The EPA is also authorized to delegate NPDES permitting to states. So the California State Water Resources Control Board is authorized by the EPA to issue certain permits. The 9 regional water quality control boards issue municipal permits that regulate a local government, in this case, us, San Mateo County, to implement certain practices. So for example, the county is required to conduct commercial and industrial inspections. We're required to do new development project reviews, things of that nature. The authority for the county to implement the NPDES permit provisions is our stormwater ordinance. And we've had this ordinance in place since 1995 with revisions over the years. Multiple county departments implement and enforce the stormwater program for public and private development activities. So for example, environmental health services responds to illicit discharges by businesses. The Department of Public Works constructs green infrastructure for county facilities. Planning and building review public and private development projects for impervious surface requirements. The Sustainability Department acts as a coordination department within the county. So this ordinance update is focused on continuing to provide the county with the structure and the authority to implement the NPDES permit that the county is under. But similar to like a general plan or an LCP, the ordinance is not intended to outline the requirements of a particular project or provide details on how a stormwater measure should be constructed. Those types of details are in our implementation plans, which is like the county drainage manual, for instance, and other documents. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Sultan, and he's going to talk a little bit more about purpose and applicability.
Thank you. The purpose of updating the stormwater ordinance, just to reiterate, focuses on three main goals. First, to align with current state requirements. Second, to give the county the authority to implement and enforce NPDES permit provisions. And third, to reflect the shared responsibility across county departments for coordination and compliance. In the following slides, I'll highlight the key changes made to achieve these goals. The ordinance applies to both private and public development, as well as activities within the unincorporated county. Examples of these activities include watershed scale water quality testing to identify pollutant loads, erosion and sediment control for development permits, installation of trash capture devices in county road rights-of-way to prevent trash from entering water bodies, and non-stormwater discharges by businesses such as kitchen wastewater into county storm drains. Key ordinance changes. The 1995 ordinance designates environmental health as the lead agency for stormwater compliance. But since then, the county has adopted a more collaborative approach to implementing the NPDES program. To update the ordinance and reflect the shared responsibility across departments, the update changes sole responsibility from the Environmental Health Services to the Sustainability Department, Planning and Building, Parks, Environmental Health, and Public Works. The definitions in the current ordinance are narrow. So to provide clearer and more current terms, new and expanded definitions have been added, including terms like illicit discharge, responsible party, and full trash capture devices, just to name a few. The updated ordinance also expands the definition of authorized enforcement official to other staff in the county beyond just environmental health services. The ordinance now refers to supporting documents instead of copying them directly. One example is the county drainage manual, which serves as a how-to guide for the public on installing drainage measures. The manual outlines San Mateo County's drainage requirements for private property development and sets the appropriate level of review based on project size and location. Another example is the emergency response plans, which detail the county's internal actions for handling various stormwater pollution situations. These documents can be viewed online. By incorporating these documents this way, the ordinance becomes more streamlined, easier to navigate, and comprehensive. Staff can modify these documents without needing to amend the ordinance, which allows for flexibility. New provisions from the stormwater permit have been added. Some key updates include trash reduction measures that meet the latest regional water board standards, specifically in high trash generating areas, which are more common on the bay side, and the introduction of operations and maintenance agreements for regulated stormwater management facilities, such as green infrastructure sites. Additionally, the language throughout the ordinance has been updated to ensure legal authority to enforce the NPDES permit, such as stopping construction on a site where proper controls are not in place. I'm going to hand this off to Sarah, who will expand on the ordinance's land use applicability.
Land use applicability. The updated ordinance is consistent with current land use regulations and continues to provide the authority to support goals and policies in these regulations. For example, the local coastal program talks about a minimum stormwater requirements and best management practices, which are noted in policy 1.35 and appendix 1A, private and public for new development. The updated stormwater ordinance best management practices are included, as well as the authority to perform routine inspections and stop and or stop construction and or grading work where BMPs are not in place. Environmental review. The county staff have reviewed and updated the ordinance for CEQA compliance and have determined that the ordinance update is categorically exempt from CEQA under Class 8. And for our next steps, our immediate next steps are to present at community councils as we are this evening, listening to comments and answering questions. Then we'll go to the Planning Commission for recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. And finally, we'll go to the Board of Supervisors for adoption of the ordinance. And with that, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions or hear comments. Thank you.
We'll start with thank you. We'll start with the public. Any questions on this proposed ordinance? Get back to where I can see people.
Greg and Sid's first off, I see their hands.
Thank you. Greg?
Thanks for coming. What's the deadline for receiving comments? And then I have a few questions.
So we don't have a hard deadline set at the moment because I know that we need to go to the North Fair Oaks Community Council tomorrow night, and then we're going to go to PMAC on the March 11th, I think. But I want to give the councils time to draft any comments if they wanted to, and I know that takes a little bit of time to do that in between meetings. So if you need, a month or 2 months to do that, in the meantime, we're going to prepare for a planning commission, but we do want to get your comments before we head off to planning commission if you do have them.
So I'm no longer on the council, but I am, for better or worse, the primary author of a 270-page report on stormwater. And our focus was primarily on the flooding. If you listen to the beginning of the meeting, you already heard some of the longstanding concerns. It seems you are mostly focused on polluting. I would request somebody to forward the council and me an inventory of the Midcoast stormwater system and its components. The engineers I've spoken to who work in private firms are unable to find such a thing. Secondly, I want to make you aware of the National Academy of Sciences report that came out earlier this 2024, which said, in essence, we've been estimating stormwater peak precipitation wrong. We knew we were doing it wrong, and it didn't matter until climate change. They now forecast 10 to 15 years to figure out how to do it right. You're already probably aware of the wildfire and insurance problems which stem from the county or the state having a law which refused to allow insurance companies to use forward-looking modeling to assess risk. Yet the drainage manual, which the county updated in the fall, I think December was the update, they finally started using the newest data from NOAA, which was released earlier in 2024. That data stops at 2014, omitting the last 10 years of climate change, which are the hottest and the most, what do you want to call it? Increasing climate change in our history. So a fatal flaw to date has been looking at historical data to assess risk. And I'm requesting that the county cannot do that. You can't do it in wildfire and it can't do it in stormwater. You've got to start using the actual precipitation that we are experiencing and stop using data. It used to be 20 years old. Now it's 10 years old. Okay. So those are just some high level comments.
Can we get some response from the presenters?
Yeah, I would just recommend if you could send that to us in an email. That would be wonderful. That way we have it, if you want to have it as a formal comment.
Sure. Do I have is it in the chat where we send that?
We can
Claire,
provide our
FCC
emails, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll put my email in the chat just for grins, because if somebody can send me that inventory, I'd love to see it.
I can get you their email addresses if they're not able to put them in the chat right now. Jill?
Thanks, Claire. So I have two low-level questions. So the first one is, how will this ordinance affect the community? I mean, how will we see it in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, the ordinance really is the structure for the county to comply with the state permit, with the regional permit that we're under. Because our ordinance is so out of date, it identifies, I mean, yeah, it identifies environmental health services as the department that carries out and enforces the stormwater program in the county, and only environmental health. But, you know, things change over time and we don't operate that way. So we're trying to align it with the multiple departments that actually carry out the stormwater program, and at the same time having to meet any updated requirements for the state permit, the regional permit that we're under. I don't know if you will necessarily see or feel this ordinance in your day-to-day, other than there are a couple of sections in the ordinance that talk about which department is responsible for receiving a request for something, such as if you see an illicit discharge, who would I send that to? And it would be Sustainability Department, because we coordinate that and we can coordinate among the different departments where that should go. Or any waiver requests go to the Planning and Building Department. So there's some departments that are called out in the ordinance, but it's not an ordinance for projects or details of projects. It's an ordinance for our structure, how we work the program in the county.
Did you have an additional question, Jill? Jill? Okay, I guess not. Sid, go ahead. Do you have a
I'm sorry.
question for the-
I'm sorry, Claire. I couldn't unmute. What did you ask?
I said, oh, Jill, is that
Yeah.
Jill that's talking to you? You had a second question?
No, that was it. Thank you very much. It was a very good answer.
Sid, you have a question for the presenter?
I do. So you are trying to make an ordinance that will bring the county into compliance with the State Water Resources Control Board, et cetera, and further up the chain, right? That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, we're updating the ordinance because the permit that the county is under changed.
Yes.
And so we're aligning with the changes.
And so my question is, you heard the speaker Burnett Silvera talk about Quarry Park, which is a county park, and there's been a ongoing stormwater runoff problem that comes down out of County Park into the streets, and it actually runs all the way down into the ocean. And it's probably not in compliance with the stormwater things from NPDS. So are you going to address it, or is it just going to get brushed off like the Parks Department's been doing? Who are you going to be the go-to place to complain to, or would they just might as well just call the State Water Resources Control Board?
So the ordinance won't get to that.
Okay.
Because it's the structure of the county's program. We do, as a sustainability department, we act as the coordinating department in the county for some stormwater activities, not all of them. We coordinate reporting among the departments, along with other external agencies to meet water quality requirements. So we have multiple TMDLs.
What's that?
Within the county.
What's a
total
TMDF?
maximum, it's a total maximum daily load where we have to monitor in different watersheds for bacteria and sediment.
I see.
So we coordinate that with the different departments so that we can do the reporting that's required and meet the requirements of those TMDLs.
So if you get a citizen's complaint, where does it go? I think you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, sometimes they come into our department. Sometimes they go in through Public Works. If they come in through us, we have our emergency response plans and we will route it properly. Sultan, did you want to speak to that a little more, because you and Sarah really kind of manage that more closely than I do?
Sure, yeah. Kind of like you mentioned, we receive notices or complaints from the public through various ways. If we were to make a suggestion, it would be to please just email our department at sustainability@smcgov.org, and then we can route it to the appropriate department.
Can you put, all three of you, put your emails in our chat before the end of the meeting? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, no, you will.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
no, wait.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public
Two more hands
portion of
up.
this. What?
Lisa and
Oh,
Lisa catching up.
okay, we'll not close it quite yet. Lisa and Jane, please, and then we'll close the public portion and turn to the council. So Lisa?
Yes, it has been my understanding that the county ordinance is about water quality and reducing pollutants that run into the ocean, whereas what I hear from the Midcoast and discussions have been more focused on quantity of runoff and flooding. Is that true?
That's true.
Yeah.
So, nobody seems to acknowledge this difference.
I think that's a good point to make, Lisa. You guys agree with that, right?
Yeah, but quantity is linked to quality because of what it's carrying as it
Presenters.
Oh, sorry.
I was looking at you.
Looked like it.
I was. So
yeah, it really is a water quality issue to reduce pollutants entering water courses and water bodies. It is a pollutant reduction aim.
Jane?
I live on Deer Creek, so I was very interested in the water course section of the report, and I like the strengthening that was in there. I do have a question though. You'd be testing for silting and also for bacteria levels, is my understanding. Has there been any discussion? I have two questions. Has there been any discussion about testing for insecticides or other kind of chemical pollutants? Because I don't get the sense that anyone's testing for that. And with the fishing industry there and the recreational use of the surf, I think that would be a good thing to make sure that people are safe. And the other thing is, I found that the wording really quite good regarding keeping the water course, because El Granada Deer Creek runs through the neighborhood, goes under houses, it goes through yards. So I thought the language there was very clear, even though it's going through the neighborhood. So that was my question.
I'm glad to hear that because crafting language is always an interesting task. But thank you for that. Sultan, can I maybe lean on you since you're working more closely with that? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so this kind of goes back to the TMDL question, total maximum daily load, which is a policy for impaired water bodies. And the TMDL in this area, in the multiple watersheds across the region, do not include pollutants for insecticides or, I'm sorry, what was the other one that you asked about?
Herbicides.
Herbicides. Yeah, those, it's just for bacteria in this area, so that's what we're testing for.
I'd like to turn to the council. We'll just go around the table. Chris, I'm sorry I cut you off before. Please go ahead.
Problem. Thank you. county staff appreciate you coming and informing us about this layer of, county oversight of environmental health and quality that I'm sure many, if not most of us, are completely unaware of. My questions had to do with, again, kind of the nuts and bolts of how this program works, specifically with regard to, say, individual residential parcel development proposals. So you mentioned that Public Works and Planning and Building is going to get a role in implementing this ordinance. That's correct?
Yeah, they already do have that role. And they've had that role for some time now. The Planning and Building Department will review public and private development projects for stormwater compliance. So they have their own checklist that runs through, impervious surface and flow and volume and all of that. So they already do that work. Our ordinance was out of date and didn't account for that. Public Works does the work as well. They still have to meet green infrastructure requirements, and they also take a look at stormwater compliance as well. So it's already happening. It's just our ordinance was out of date.
So for many residential parcels, they're pretty small. Is there a lower acreage threshold where the ordinance would not apply?
There is a square footage threshold. I remember a certain threshold, which I know has changed. Sultan, do you know the square footage?
Yeah, sorry. The current square footage in the permit is 5,000 square feet. So if a project is less than that, then it doesn't need to meet certain drainage requirements. But anything 5,000 or greater does.
So would the county consider altering that for communities and unincorporated coastside communities like El Granada, where you have lots of non-conforming lots that are considerably smaller than 5,000 square feet? And those are the ones that are getting kind of the most development pressure right now because they're the only ones that are left.
Yeah, and the 5,000 square feet threshold is for treating any runoff from impervious surfaces that are replaced or created on these parcels. Is if your question is kind of more of a drainage for flooding issue, then that's outside of the permit.
Okay, so again, to clarify, this is really focused on water quality and not quantity. And so it wouldn't provide any relief to, say, folks that were here speaking that are impacted by, increasing development in watersheds that are generating a great deal of runoff in an unsustainable way, I might add.
Yeah, we can take a look at the square footage a little closer. I admit I haven't looked at that for some time. I know the square footage parcels has dropped from the 10 to the 5,000. And I think that's part of the permit requirement that we are under with the regional board, the state permit. But we can take a look at that and get back to you. I can at least give you the section if it's noted in there so that we can reference it for you.
And then for messaging, I think it'd be really important to make it very clear what the ordinance does and doesn't cover, because I think there were, again, a lot of people who are expressing a lot of concern about what they perceive to be a stormwater problem, and would like to know whether or not, future ordinance is going to provide them any relief from flooding.
Gus, you have any questions or comments?
Just to say, I appreciate the presentation. I think this is great work. It's important work to focus on the quality. At the same time, as the saying goes, quantity has a quality all of its own, and my hope is that the county will address the quantity issues of stormwater with the same level of rigor that it's clearly addressing the quality issue of stormwater. Thank you.
Bonnie?
Again, similar to Gus, appreciate the presentation and thank you for the focus, but I don't have any questions at this point.
Kimberly?
Yes, I have
Oh,
some
boy.
questions. So, I do appreciate the presentation, and it's good to know about this. My questions kind of get at some of these other questions in that, first of all, you mentioned that this brings all the agencies, into alignment in terms of responsibility. And so what I'm wondering is it the county or who ensures that each of them lives up to their responsibility? How do you decide who, some of these things are clearly spelled out in other areas, right? Or other pieces of policy or whatever. But how do you get at that issue of, you know, I know that here we experience on the coast side, a lot of times there are multi-jurisdictional issues in which none of the jurisdictions want to take responsibility. So how do you ensure that somebody takes responsibility if you see that it's within their purview?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, we work with the departments every day. With each of the departments, we're in contact with them. We work together on putting together this ordinance update. So we do check in with one another. A lot of the responses or the coordination that we do, it's not necessarily one department that does it themselves. And in some cases it is. We don't do water quality sampling. For instance, sustainability doesn't, environmental health does that. But we do check in and coordinate with one another on implementing this program. I'll say at the regional level, we also work with CCAG. CCAG helps to coordinate the annual report that is due to the water board. CCAG is City and County Association of Governments. There is one large report that is due to the state. And that large report is the county as well as all the cities. So our own departments, including the cities and the county, then have to report out to the state. And that's kind of the large check on things. We also have to report to the regional board for the work that we do in the county. And that's also a check on us to make sure that we're doing the work.
Okay, so I guess what I'm searching for is a mechanism by which, you know, the sort of a higher level mechanism by which there's some something that kicks in that ensures that when there are gaps, there's something that directs a particular agency to deal with those things. There are a lot of things that seem to fall through the cracks here, and the county would seem to be the lead player, but they often don't stand up and take on the responsibility. And so if there's a mechanism I'm missing, then please call my attention to it. But I think that there needs to be some thought to that at the county level. What is the mechanism by which you tie all these things together and ensure that certain things that don't fit neatly get addressed? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, and Sultan, I don't know in your kind of day-to-day if this has come up with any of the departments.
Yeah, there's certainly some instances where maybe there's not a procedure in place, or it's maybe the first time it's come up, and we will work with all of the departments to try to identify who is the lead agency, and then from there it's, you know, constant check-ins and trying to improve that process, and if it's not working, tweaking it. Essentially, yeah, if there's any gaps, we do try to address them. And if you have any, you know, gaps that you've noticed or suggestions, happy to take those comments if you'd like to email them as well.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that it's the Office of Sustainability's, purview, that this is within your scope necessarily, but I think I'm putting a bug in your ear that this is something that's needed. There needs to be a holistic approach and a holistic view to a lot of these problems, especially with that issue with quality versus quantity. And then my other question is, if you're only addressing bacterial contamination and that biological contamination, that's probably not the right word. Who is the body that addresses chemical contaminations like agricultural runoff, herbicide, and pesticide runoff in stormwater and other water bodies, water sources?
Yeah, so I can take that one. Different, I guess, polluters or sources of pollution, larger operators like farmland and confined animal facilities, they each have their own, they're kind of permittees to this as well and have their own checklist of best management practices to reduce pollution in stormwater. And so sometimes we work with them if their drainage is impacting different watersheds that we look at closely. But it's kind of broken out by who the source of pollution is. For us, we look at the county's unincorporated area. And then if there's, larger private developments or, for example, public agencies as well, like Caltrans has their own stormwater permit and they have their own list of things to look for. So it kind of depends on who the source of pollution is and what the pollutants are.
Okay, so TMDLs in terms of chemical contamination is more a state and federal regulatory responsibility. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would say so, since they're the ones who coordinate the permits.
Okay.
If I could clarify, I think the question is not a permitting level, but as time goes on, who is actually doing the sampling?
Right.
I'm not sure I heard.
I didn't.
that.
Yeah, is there anybody who looks, right now, you're not looking at pesticides and herbicides in the water. Is there anybody that does look at it?
That would also be the state water board as well.
Again, I'll repeat it in front of the microphone. The question isn't permitting level. The question is, on an ongoing basis, does anybody coordinate the sampling for herbicides and other agricultural and industrial pollutants that are making it into the water streams?
Thank you, Dave.
I see. Yeah, I'm not sure who coordinates those sampling. The county only does the bacterial and sediment.
So it's something we need to find out, I guess.
Who does the first flush? If somebody does first flush through the county.
Okay, so I'm asking questions I think that are just beyond what your scope is for this, but I think they're related and that's why I'm bringing them up. And just one other thing, when there are jurisdictions like the Space Force Station here on the coast side, which also contributes runoff to the ocean, that's probably not that's not a bacterial contamination necessarily, but I'm just curious, when you have a jurisdiction like that, how then is that regulated?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's out of our scope as well, and I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Scott?
Hey, thanks for helping us navigate the complicated bureaucracy of stormwater in all the different groups that have an umbrella over. We definitely appreciate that. I have one question. Have you ever, or any of your organizations ever responded to a residential stormwater issue in the Midcoast recently?
I didn't hear part of that, Sultan. Did you hear have we
I would-
ever?
Have
Yeah,
you
one more
ever,
time, please.
have you ever responded to a complaint in a residential area regarding stormwater recently? It sent somebody to investigate or or like written a report on that we can look at, anything like, that's what I'm asking. Have you ever responded to a residential stormwater runoff complaint recently?
We have, it on private property specifically, it's usually if something is running off from a property that either has a coloration to it or is a known pollutant or something like that. We do coordinate with planning and building and code enforcement to have staff go on site and investigate and take the necessary actions. The procedure for that laid out in our C5 illicit discharge and emergency response plan. And so, yes, that has come up recently where we've had staff and we report on that to the water board annually.
So have you ever responded to any issues of stormwater running out of Quarry Park in particular and written a report on that?
No, I don't believe we have.
Can you do that? Is that possible?
How
do we get that? How can we make that happen?
If I would say if our office or the county in general receives any complaints from that, we'll do our best to coordinate a response. But again, our team here kind of mostly focuses on if it's a pollution problem. If it's a flooding issue, I think that's a separate case.
If I might, I just want to piggyback on that. I think what he's getting at is there are several creek outfalls in the area that suffer from, contamination with Enterococcus and other things. And how does that mesh with what you do? Because we have a hard time addressing those things, and I feel like those are the things that fall through the gaps.
We have a best management practice plan for the TMDL in this area. The state doesn't require sampling in the creeks for this TMDL yet. And so right now we're focused on identifying all of the various sources. If the public has any recommendations or has observed anything, please let us know because we'd love to take a closer look at that.
You turn on my camera. So thank you very much for your presentation. I have worked in state, city, federal governments and been very aware of the bureaucracy and the like layers that you have to go through. So I appreciate the organizational structure of your presentation. However, one of the things that I think is most important about what we do here at the MCC is to elevate our community's voice and to bring community concern to different organizations, entities within local governance. There was a fairly impassioned speaker here tonight talking about runoff in her property stemming from 4 other properties. Chris made mention of some items. You just talked about residential, and you mentioned an emergency response system that I think I heard correctly, and that if individual complaints or concerns, questions were to come to you, it would kind of funnel through to that entity. My concern, or I guess the bigger question, is how can the MCC better serve the broader community in ensuring that questions don't get lost in an email that is punted from one group to another group to another group? And also, maybe this is a question for Marisol in terms of how we coordinate with the Board of Supervisors and other county agencies. How do we give our community the best opportunity to get a response about a specific question, or to get something that is action oriented when they are, watching, their property, flood, or when you have neighbors who are talking about trying to mitigate situations like that and potentially creating more risk and adding not just to the quantity, which is something that you really don't look at, but if through their efforts, somehow they're altering something, and then all of a sudden you do have a quality issue. I think those are important things for us to look at, and in trying to make recommendations, we always want to quantify community voice as largely as possible. If there's a tiered system that you have in terms of it comes in and it goes to Sultan, and you might know the agency that would be better in responding. If there's something that we could perhaps share within our toolkit to our community members, looking at your agency's name, I could imagine a lot of people would reach out to you and thinking that their issue is your issue. How do we ensure that those community members are getting responses, and what is the kind of quantifiable step, Marisol, that we would need to take in order to, if it's coming from the Board of Supervisors on behalf of the MCC to you in order to affect a change? Like, how do we engage in that conversation? To any of you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those comments, and a lot of great questions in there. I think from my experience, what I've seen that's been helpful, if there's a parcel that's being affected in some way, shape, or form, we have a process, we try to follow it, reaching out to our department. And what's really helpful is, this is just one of the many ways, but really helpful is providing photo or video documentation, which allows us to respond in the best way possible, and allows us to elevate to the proper people or proper departments. But also, I think just what you're doing now, just kind of having this conversation and asking these tough questions, which gives us something to think about and work on internally, is very helpful. And then also collecting all the information and data that you have in the stormwater report that we've heard about, I think is a good step.
Just to clarify,
Sorry,
I think
just-
specifically
just to
something
kinda
that
give
could be
the
helpful
perspective
is.
from working with
Oh,
the
I'm sorry,
supervisor.
Marisol. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just working with the supervisor's office, I think what I've done before is I've had people call in individually and I've spoken to them on the issue. But if, Kevin, you're referring to a group of people, I would have to ask the supervisor based on the issue and mentioning the number of people who have that same issue, or if it's various issues. I'd have to go over the protocol with him. So I'm not really sure at this point. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Sure. I mean, I think that this is something that is going to be an ongoing conversation. It's been happening in the community since I've lived here. I've been affected by overflow water issues, and I think the question is, I guess, twofold now. So to Marisol, you're talking about quantifiable numbers of people who are having the same issues. And that speaks directly to the MCC. How can we funnel all of those community voices into some kind of written request to your office for response? That's one thing, and a separate issue. And then to our presenters, if you have a communication tree, if you will, in terms of an individual complaint or concern comes into your office, it's not within your purview, it's outside of what you do. Therefore, you send it to organization Z. And I think it would be helpful for our community members. We have a very informative website. And I think as we start to address these issues, fire, water, water quality, but also water quantity, I think it would be helpful to have a resource from our presenters in terms of when those concerns do come in, what the channels are for our community members so they can see it, so they can use that as a toolkit and know if it's not within your purview, who you would send it to so that they can follow up and be an active voice in things that are concerning them in their everyday life.
Yeah, one great resource that I would direct you to is the illicit discharge enforcement response plan, which is online and we can link it.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure, yeah, and there's a number of them. There's one for commercial and industrial businesses, there's one for illicit discharge, and then there's one for construction site controls. And all of them have decision trees kind of laid out to show you the internal flow that the county goes through. And then one thing I also wanted to share is that when our office receives a complaint, we try to identify the appropriate department, but it doesn't just end there. We're kind of that department that follows up and makes sure that it happens, versus just kind of sending it off and hoping it gets taken care of.
That's great to hear. I still think that you sharing that and us posting that and advocating that our communities, look for that information on whether it's our website or yours would be very helpful, because oftentimes I think things happen and a lot of members of our community feel like it happens to them or after the fact. And I think we're trying to preempt that and engage people in active dialogues. Thank you.
I will let you know, Sultan has read the latest draft of Reg's stormwater report. And it's obviously two different approaches.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to the final version of the stormwater report so we can start pushing that. I think that'll be a big step. Thank you very much for coming. I don't know if anybody wants to discuss any further action on this on the council, or if we're just gonna leave it for now. I'm inclined to leave it for now, hoping that we get the stormwater report to look at.
Agreed.
Soon. Okay. So then we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a update on changes with the treasurer's office.
Oh, my information. I'll keep it actually fairly brief. So over the course of my onboarding and taking over the treasury responsibilities, multiple issues have come up, and they're probably predictable to most of you. The first is the ability for individuals to access our information, our data, our account numbers is an ever-growing challenge to mitigate. At one time, there were 4 debit cards, all with unique account numbers linked to our master account that were not closed, that were still active and open. That has been remedied. But then recently, within the last week, Claire and I were both notified about an attempt for a check. I think it was for approximately $2,000 that was submitted. It was a former council member, and the signatures were identical. So it looked as if the person just took and piecemealed together a check for that amount and tried to cash it. I think the question for this group, I think for the council and for public comment, obviously, would be the recommendation from the bank is to not let these kinds of instances just go and say, we're able to get past it, but instead they want us to file a police report and allow, if there's any action to be taken, if they can trace routing information, if they can, I've been able to identify by the bank where it occurred and the location of that bank. And we do have the sender's information, at least their name. I don't think Claire or I had a concern that it was, the council member that was involved, but I do think it would benefit us to file a report with the police department and at least see if they come up with anything. I mean, they're probably busy with other things, but it doesn't hurt. And I think that's what was advised by the banking manager, and that's what I'm advising the council consider tonight.
Yeah, so I would like to entertain a motion to file a police report and then discuss whether we should do it or not.
Sure.
So does anybody want to make a motion to that effect?
Sure, I'm moving to file a police report.
Okay,
What's
second?
Who are we gonna file? What police department are we filing this with?
Sheriff, local sheriff, yeah.
Look, you mean San Mateo County Sheriff?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I talked to the bank, they were saying it's probably not gonna help us to file a police report directly. But if they are aware of some pattern of some sort that we can contribute to, they may be able to stop this.
And that is the same information I received. It's not gonna help us necessarily directly, but if there's any correlation between this person and other activity that they've engaged in, it will help.
So is there any further discussion on whether we
Yes.
should file a police report or not?
So just to clarify, a person who formerly had an association with this council attempted to defraud?
No.
No.
A person who was formerly responsible for having checks. An individual got either something with their signature on it or a check and created a fraudulent check that they then submitted through their bank portal online. So similar to when you would get a physical check in the mail, and most of us have the ability to scan the back of it and deposit it right into our account. It was one of those situations where they were trying to deposit into their account. So the activity that Claire and I are talking about would essentially identify if there's routing information and bank information, and if they can tie that to an individual and then take action on that part of it.
It was not in any way, we don't think, related to the former council member, except that they used the person's name.
Okay.
They made a dummy check.
Yeah.
It was like not even a real check from our account. It was like,
Yeah, it was
they made
copied
it
and
up.
pasted all of the components of a check, but it was close enough that one of the bank managers said to me, like, if a person would have brought this in with a valid ID and that signature was on it, it could have been a different outcome altogether. But because they know our history and the kind of volume and the amounts that our checks have been in the past, they were able to flag it and contact us. And since we don't get money essentially right now, I say we hold on to as much of it as we can.
So if we're ready
Thanks for
to
your
vote,
gatekeeping.
No, you had a motion
Yeah, you're-
that Scott made the motion, no one seconded, so. there we go.
somebody seconded it?
I will second
Okay.
Scott's motion.
Okay. So Connie, could you call the roll?
Sure. Chris,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Connie, yes.
Okay, so I guess you'll take care of that?
Yes.
Okay,
Probably should have had a discussion before you voted, but.
we did.
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, because the signature changes every time. Because the signature changes every time the treasurer changes, that check should never have gone through and you would have been reimbursed had gone.
The bank doesn't know that, so
Yes,
that's,
they do know.
no, they don't. They told me specifically, they do not know the names of the new treasurers unless we come in and inform them. I
Well, yeah,
informed that at
that
that
is
time.
something you have to do every time there's a new.
That's
treasurer.
right, and I
That's
did
in
it.
the procedures.
Yeah.
Should happen. So you're saying it was under the previous treasurer?
No, it was not.
Not 10 years back.
No.
It was not the previous.
Okay, well, that's my point. Wouldn't have gone through.
We could have appealed it or something, yeah.
There's also people on Zoom.
We already voted, but if you'd like to chat, go ahead. Greg,
I just wanted to mention that I'm still getting emails announcing the statement is available from the bank.
that's being
Try-
changed. That's being changed.
Yeah, good. I haven't tried to open them, but I shouldn't be on there. Thanks.
No, it's in the process. Dan?
Can I just
Yeah.
add, one of the end outcomes of this is that we've changed our account number so that the issue of somebody's check clearing or not clearing isn't an issue. And the bank does not engage with the MCC at a level where they know the current treasurer. That's part of the process that I was going through when this happened. So we were getting debit cards, and in that process, right in that window, somebody had tried to clear a check. So this will be avoided.
And because we were trying to clean up the fact that we had unaccounted for debit cards, we had to change the debit card numbers. And because of the bad check, we had to change the checking account numbers. So that's why we've had some problems with some billing. I think it's almost all cleared up.
Okay.
It's been a lot of work there. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Dan?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually feel that the council should not should rescind the vote. And I'm saying this because I think that it's kind of opening up a can of worms that may stress the council. You don't know, you're going to be having to come down and make statements. I personally believe it's kind of a bank issue, and they should have all the information to catch and reverse track and identify whoever push that check through. So in my opinion, it's kind of a bank issue, and I don't want to see the Midcoast Community Council have to walk into any unnecessary complications as a result of this. I'm sure it happens to many different accounts. It's not an unusual thing nowadays. But furthermore, obviously, everything should be looked at, with the bank and make sure. Sounds like checking account number was changed, which probably good. But who's to say that some crook, in the future can't somehow find the new account number. So, I don't know if an outside consultant, can help with this as far as protecting the Midcoast Community Council, years down the road. So I guess that's the avenue I would kind of approach to, because in today's day and age, with AI and everything, and the meetings recorded, they know your voice, all this stuff. They can, and all these scams that you hear about, they're getting more and more sophisticated and harder to determine whether it's a scam or not. So I think the bank should be helpful, but I think that the bank, it's kind of a bank problem. Somebody defrauding the bank. Simple as that, in my opinion. But definitely look forward to some type of consultation to kind of mitigate any future problems.
So Dan, I want to respond as the presenter. So it seems like you were saying two things that are directly in conflict with one another. The bank did reach out to us, and the bank did take all the preemptive steps that they needed to take, and we were glad for that. But in addition, you're talking about the evolution of scams or fraud, and then you're talking about not engaging the police department. The bank does not track these checks. They do not have the capacity to track them. If that check would have been cashed, then Claire and I would have asked for that money to be rescinded, and that's when they would have gotten involved, but it would still have required us to file a police report. So the police report is an essential part of every aspect that you're talking about. I do not think that this needs a consultant, and I think that the vote should stand for us to file a report and let the police get that information. If they have anything to report back to us, we can then report back to the group.
So Dan was
I'm certainly not an expert, but that's just my hunch that the council will be disturbed unnecessarily. But again, I'm not an expert. It's just kind of a hunch.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Yeah, I'm going to just ask something first. Dan has asked that we reconsider the vote. Is there anybody that wants to reconsider the vote? Okay, so Kimberly, what did you want to say?
Two things. I think Greg said he was getting statements. Is that correct? Not Dan, Greg.
I'm receiving emails saying my statement is ready. I have not tried to open those emails, so I don't know. I shouldn't be able to look at them even if I tried, but I shouldn't get the emails.
Okay.
That's been stopped.
Okay, so I was just thinking if we actually we don't get paper statements. If we did, they would go to our MCC mailbox.
That's right.
Okay. And then the other question is, our bank account at some point is going to go away because of the new county changes. And so we won't have this, you know, potential issue forever.
We will, because even when the county gives us money to buy paper with, we're gonna have to put it somewhere until we buy the paper.
I actually thought they were proposing that we would only get, that they would hold on to money and we would only get like like what Ray called office cash. We would put that.
Who's gonna put that somewhere? Um,
The treasurer.
that's hypothetical.
Okay. And just a treasurer question. Was it decided that we do not get our allocation from the county this year
That's correct.
until we've spent all our money?
That's right.
That's correct.
It's been that way for the last 2 years.
I still have a problem with that.
But that's a separate
That's
issue.
separate
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's done, I think. You pulled the Rides Plus letter.
Yes.
Did you have a concern?
So in regards to letters, I'm not opposed to the letter at all. I think it's a good thing to send. I think tonight we heard requests for letters from 3 different members of the community. And so in writing a letter of support or a letter of recommendation, the words a lot of people, I've heard from a lot of people, I recommend, I want this letter of support to be written, or I think you should write this letter of support. I think I have more of a question about it, and that is, you know, we want to bring community concern to light. We want to be able to forward to the appropriate entities public concern, community concern. I'm wondering, like, is there a tipping point, or is there just a motion made by this group to write a letter of support regardless of how much community input is given on a specific issue?
I think there's different, if I can address some of that. I think there's different levels of writing letters. This particular type of letter, and the same with the letter that we wrote on the Montero Mountain, which are both on consent. Are issues that we have taken positions on in the past, have written on in the past, and we're just saying it again. So those in my mind are established positions that we're just reiterating because nobody heard us before.
Can you define just for me established position and how you came to an established position?
We had agenda items on it, we voted on our position, and we documented it.
Was there community input?
There's
as part of that
always
process?
community input.
Okay.
So these letters are not coming out of the clear blue sky. They're coming from something we've already said and had a process leading to our saying it.
Yeah, I just wanted more clarification and a better understanding of that process.
Now, when people come here tonight and say, you should write a letter about this or that or the other thing. Yeah, we very likely will. But then you have to go through the whole process of putting it on the agenda, having public input, and generating a whole new letter.
I appreciate that. I see that's what I think that's the part that I wanted to hear from somebody, you in particular, is like the process of when a singular individual says, I would recommend that you write a letter, to actually getting to the point where the letter is written. You're talking about multiple steps, including community input prior to that letter being drafted and perhaps sent. So thank you for the clarification.
Dave?
There is one class of exceptions to that, and that is when supervisor or somebody from planning or somewhere else in the county government comes to the council and says, we're submitting this grant request. It really helps if we have community support. Please write a letter supporting that grant. And that will get maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes as much as an hour, depending on the subject of discussion at that meeting, and that's done. So that's a different class, and that very seldom involves the community, other than the community at one meeting.
And I think, so you're hitting on my concern, is if something happens and we get a request and we are asked to act on something in a fairly quick manner, how do we go from the proposal of drafting a letter and ensure that we are articulating the voice of our broader community in said letter? I think you explained part of that and how you see that happening. You're talking about something that you're identifying as a different class coming from a body of governance. So.
Yeah, well, we don't do anything without at least the opportunity for some public input. I mean, I guess the quality and quantity of it might vary.
Well, we're all community members, so it's not just that.
And there's another category, if you want to go into all this, which is sometimes somebody will contact a council member and say, I've got this big problem with this tree in my yard, can you help me? And then there may be, you help that person out and you may help them contact the right people or something like that. That's a whole different thing.
Yes, I've seen those letters in our email.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move we approve 5B. Can we vote on that?
Second,
Are you okay with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, call the roll. Kevin,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Claire,
yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Connie, yes.
Right.
Okay. Council activity.
Clarification on items in 6. So presentation of the stormwater report was pulled.
Yes,
And the consideration of peer
Peer-
review
was pulled.
Okay, I didn't hear that one.
I'm sorry.
was A and B.
We haven't heard the report yet and we didn't get the proposals in time for the meeting.
Got it.
But I do need to make a correction. Greg pointed out that I made a mistake when I talked about the lighting for the El Granada School. It is not tomorrow. It is March 6th. I think.
March 6th.
Well, we have a couple of days to figure it out.
March 6th is the first report.
Well, maybe it's some other time. It's in the chat.
I sent you an email that I got from Roger Antikar of El Granada that details it is March 6th. You have it.
So they're both March 6th. Okay. One's in the morning and one's in the evening. Okay, council activity?
So I did the Half Moon Bay City Council report, MCC report to the Half Moon Bay City Council last Tuesday.
And I attended the first MCC liaison GCSD meeting. It was very well received. They were very happy to see somebody actively from the MCC sitting in. Of course, I did not participate. I did hear a lot of interesting things regarding a lot of the stuff that we discuss regularly here. So perhaps an additional clarification on when we are attending those meetings, how to perhaps write like a prelim report to you and Kimberly. Just
You don't need to.
so you don't want information shared with you.
Oh, I always like information, but you don't need to write a report.
I
I'm
think
wondering saying
is this
here
the
is,
form to do it, or is it better in an email first so you see the information and haven't?
I don't know, what do you think?
I think the opportunity is in the public meeting during council activity, so I'm fine with that. I don't think you need to share anything in advance. We already struggle with the Brown Act as it is, so
Yeah.
I think it's fine to just share it in the public meeting.
Well, then, so a couple of things that I did want to share is, so the Burnham Strip, the community center project. The same report by a presenter here tonight was given at the GCSD, and they addressed the parking issue. And I think that they are not taking additional recommendations for that part. And they kind of worked within their mandate. Another thing that they brought up as one of their reports that I thought was pretty interesting is some of the first signs of bird flu and other conditions in our water was reported, and I thought that was pretty concerning. And I know that we talk about this, and I wonder sometimes if we think that it's a hypothetical, but now they're saying that there were trace elements of bird flu in a water sample that was tested, and then the following test it was corrected, or it was no longer there. But the fact that it was there in the first place seemed a little scary to me.
Thank you. Kimberly and I met with Ray, for what we hope is the first of many meetings. He was the one that suggested that we rewrite the letter about the Rides Plus thing.
Yeah.
And he went along with it. I'm not sure what else to report exactly, but it was a good meeting. It was cordial, it was positive, and hopefully that'll set a good path for us. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Anybody else?
You might have seen in my emails, I went through the mid-mile broadband information and did not see anything specific to the unincorporated areas, but I think Greg said he will give us a download on kind of what's been going on there, and look for you to do that when you return. Greg, that would be helpful if you could spend some time to get us up to date on that.
Actually, Ray did talk about that.
Oh, we did.
And he said that they had once again obtained funding. So we'll see.
I think Gus is next.
Gus,
Yeah, in I think the last meeting that I was chair, and I mentioned doing some work to try to source an intern for us, and I did finally make contact with Professor Miller at College of San Mateo. He's in the political science department there, and I had a good interaction with him. He passed on information to some students, and we got a ping, and so I did a just sort of a first round Zoom interview with her, and I think we've got a real prospect. So I think Claire, you should interview her. But anyway, we have a prospect for an intern if we as a council are interested in that. So just wanted to report that.
Can I ask a question really quick? So you mentioned the Department of Science. Was there a specific focus for this individual? I mean, outreach is something that we want to focus on, community engagement. There are some issues that would have some overlap with that.
It's a political science. I mean, I asked her about, I kind of went down the list of issues that we're working on in the council, and I think her interests are general enough that, I mean, she didn't come to this with a specific policy focus that she wanted to have. She's just majoring in political science and just interested in actually getting in, trying to see how local government actually works.
Great, thank you.
Chris, did you have something?
So last week I attended the Harbor District meeting. I monitored it by Zoom. We've heard from a number of people here tonight, many of whom were present at the Harbor District meeting in person, speaking about their proposed parking proposal, and I think between the response that they're getting, the community input that they're getting, the community input that we're getting, that we need to make sure that, I mean, leaves no doubt in my mind that that's an issue that we're gonna have to that we should take up.
Well, next,
and that we would do so after we hear from the Harbor District themselves at the next meeting.
that's kind of my thinking. I'm open to other thoughts, is that we listen to them next time and share what our concerns are, and then perhaps at the next meeting or very near after that, write a letter or have further discussion on the things that we're most concerned about. After we've heard from them, and after we've had a chance to ask them questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you, and I was gonna hopefully, after we hear them, act upon the community and what they have to say.
So that's our plan then.
Absolutely.
I echo that sentiment. I think we've heard from many people that it's a concern, and waiting for them to present and ask me clarifying questions and then moving forward would be great.
So I also listened in on that meeting, and I agree with all that. I just want to point out that the Harbor District coming to our meeting next week is the quarterly reports that we've asked them to give. And so if we want them to focus on a particular issue like this, we might want to separate those things out because that's not what the request to them to come next week was for. It was for a general, quarterly report.
What if we just tell them, we know there are a lot of issues, we would like to maybe spend a little bit more time with you?
I can go back to them and ask for that.
You're
I mean,
afraid they won't
they've
come.
forced the issue by
I am.
advancing this proposal in the way that they have.
Nothing would please me more than to have them come and talk about this. Honestly think it deserves to be its own topic.
But I'm afraid they're not gonna come if it's
Maybe. I mean,
Can I interject?
sure.
If one of their topics that they come to talk about us, and I'm sure it should be, it would be their purchase of the land and their planning of this parking lot. And then we can, in the most respectful way possible, address our issues at that time.
Right. So I'm sure it's going to be mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't think they can avoid mentioning it. So maybe you have a good point. At that point, then we can ask them, could you come back and talk more to us and listen to the public on the matter?
I want to interject actually. So earlier in comments and commentary, there were some fairly heated words used about the Harbor District and how they presented, and I do think just underlining respectfully and making sure that we are creating a place of hospitality and welcoming for any entity is really critical, and probably part and parcel to being able to ask them to maybe do a future presentation if it's something that's too long and merits, further discussion.
That makes sense. I'm
underscoring the word that he said respectfully and.
Right.
I think we can be respectful, but we don't have any control over who sits out here and has.
But we can
their own-
encourage it. We can
Yeah.
sure encourage it. That's for sure.
But as we can encourage it, but as Tim Fox says, you can't control it.
That's right. Understood.
I want to be the good guy for once, okay? Twice, maybe.
What? I thought you were gonna do
No,
it.
that was it. He's being the good guy.
Oh,
Twice.
okay.
In the future, with respect to the harbor. I want to be their friend.
If there's no more about the parking proposal by the Harbor District, I'll continue.
Yes.
Yeah. There was another presentation by Brad Damitz, who's their consultant for permitting and environmental approvals for the Surfers Beach sand replenishment, sand nourishment project, which involves dredging material from inside the jetty and placing it on Surfers Beach. And where the status of that is, it's all ready to get started. And he was making a proposal for funding to continue with that's the pre-construction and construction phase of the environmental work, which includes monitoring and there were a lot of questions from a couple of the staff members, and they ultimately funded about 1/4 of his proposal just to make sure that things get started with promise to consider the remainder later. There was a brief report on survey results for the Ocean Science Center. 264 responses, mostly favorable. We're interested in education and day trips and things like that. So that's seems to be moving forward.
Was that the one where he was suggesting some kind of protected covers for the outside spaces where if kids were coming in to learn?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, an education science center, you can picture probably something like a mini Monterey Bay Aquarium kind of thing. People are really interested in learning about coastal and marine resources, and they're interested in, poking.
Yeah, I thought it was a
the
cool
rays,
project, but yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
So I have a question related to one of those items, the Surfers Beach project. the decision on that to only pay out, well, so I have to tread lightly here because we can't discuss an item, but my question is, do we also maybe in future want to consider encouraging the Harbor District to make good on their promise to execute this project, because those funds were already approved, and the fact that they're delaying by only paying out a small portion of them, which was unanticipated, was kind of concerning. So I think if that should continue, I think it might be something we would want to weigh in on behalf of the community, because I know that there's strong community support for the eelgrass project and the harbor dredging for the sand replenishment. So that's
We have multiple things to deal with.
Just to clarify, the funds that they authorized was to ensure that it would not be delayed, so that the critical path items were funded and would proceed.
That's true, but that's not the way it was originally promised to play out. Those funds are already there. That's grant funds. And so withholding the funds for the reasons they made,
I
was
think
a
we're getting
very-
into the topic. more than
Yes.
the agenda. You're in trouble. Yeah.
I'm
But thank you. I think what you're
I think
saying
you
is
get the
that
point.
this may end up on our agenda as well.
Yes, yes.
And the other thing I would like to add to this is the new fire risk maps. I think we should have someone to come and explain it to us and to explain the implications of it in terms of there may be laws that say what you can do with your house and what you can't do with your house if you live in that area.
And Claire, just one last thing.
Yeah.
Am I looking at an elephant in the room? I did purchase the MCC official laptop sitting in front of you, the Lenovo Yoga. I got it on sale. It was $700 off, and he gave us an actual discount for being engaged in civic duty.
Well, what a salesman you are.
Yeah, I thought so.
No, we're about to ask one of our esteemed former members to help us set it up.
I
Is that
see
you?
hands raised
What?
on maybe council activity. I'm not sure.
Who is it? I can't see.
Computer.
Jill Grant, Chris Langeet.
Well, let's see. Are we
Sid,
reaching
Dan.
our 9:30 magic hour?
Yeah.
When will we have to quit?
Yeah.
What should we do?
Should give them all 2 minutes.
Okay, you can have 2 minutes now, then we have to quit. So who's the first one? I can't see it.
It's like Dan, and then Sid.
Dan's hand is up from before, I think. Sid, go
I only
ahead.
wanted to address what, what was his name? Sorry. Kevin was saying. I don't think, I didn't watch the GCSD meeting, but, you said the water had bird flu in it, but I don't think that they test water at GCSD. She was probably referring to the SAM sewer testing, because they do test
I
the
didn't say
sewer
that
samples.
the GCSD was doing the testing, and I said it was based on a report. So you're right. It was coming from a report that they got.
Okay, it's not water, sewer.
Okay, who's the next one?
Chrislyn.
Krista.
Thank you. I just wanted to note, when the harbor comes and does their talk, and if you do get into the topic of the parking lots, I just want to let you guys know that they have been talking about the parking being a potential use for that land from the very beginning, even before they purchased the land. That was one of the proposed uses from the get-go. So just so you know that conversation, at least with them, was a very lightly touched subject throughout this entire process. The meeting that they just had was definitely the most in-depth they've gotten about it, but I just didn't want you taken by surprise if they retort with, well, we've been talking about it for a year.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Who's the next person?
So Jill?
Jill, go ahead.
Thank you. So the Harbor District is coming to your next meeting. What is the purpose? Is it to introduce the parking lot or is it a
They're coming
general?
because we've asked them to give us a quarterly report on what they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next person.
Dan?
And that's it.
Okay. Dan, your hands up from before, or is it up again?
No, yeah, I have something to say. It's in
Okay.
regards to the meeting for the El Granada Elementary School parking lot lighting review, Thursday, March 6th at 6 p.m. And thank you, Greg, for putting that out there. All the documents doesn't say where it will be located. It's my understanding, it needs to be confirmed, but it's my understanding that it will be at the El Granada School at the Multi-Use Center. And I'd like to request to make sure that this is posted on the MCC website to alert the community. And in the future, any notices of any kind of meeting like this should be complete with the title, the exact date, time, and location.
It's not
just
really
for-
our fault. This is what we got from what's his name?
No, you're right. Apparently, the email from Roger never included the location, but I'm just saying, the complete information should be there. The title of the meeting, and then the exact date and time and location if it's available. But again, I guess we have to have that confirmed by the school district. Thank you.
I think
thank
whoever's
you.
gonna share that information with us, if they want that in there, they should include it. And I mean, we do the best we can, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can put it on the website. The MCC
We can't
website.
without the whole thing, but when we get all the information. we
Is
can.
somebody going to take that on?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
That reminded me of something. Amy McVicker was here at our last meeting and she asked us to participate with them in their group.
Gus is doing that.
Okay. I didn't realize that we had appointed somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, are we ready to adjourn?
I am.
Let's do
I
it.
move we adjourn.
One question, so you haven't talked about Peter.
We did.
Thank you.
There was not a clear transition.
I did not hear it. We postponed the stormwater. When do you expect it to be on the agenda?
As soon as it's finished.
Is that like 2 weeks, 2 months?
We don't
2
know.
years?
We do not know.
Greg's there and he's not muted.
You want me to address something? I just pasted the location into the chat. It was in the invitation.
When will the stormwater document be done?
I had a conversation with Kimberly yesterday and she has some concerns. I'm waiting for her to pass them to me. And after I see those, I can give you a forecast of a date. Your next meeting is when is your next meeting?
26th of March, no, 12th of March.
March 12th.
Well, so Kimberly, when can I get that stuff?
As soon as I can get to it this weekend. Is that soon enough?
Well, okay, I'll have to assess, but I mean, I'm anticipating before the next meeting. The question is, how many days before the next meeting?
My understanding is that you also received other input recently that also needs to be integrated into the report. Is that?
Yeah, I'm doing that, but I don't, as we discussed, there's major restructuring potentially. And I don't know how far it's coming.
I showed up tonight to talk about that because I believe that report is extremely incomplete.
Can you?
The reason I showed up tonight was because of that agenda. And I believe that report is extremely incomplete, and now I'm hearing comments are being accepted, but it was pulled from the agenda, so there was no opportunity to comment. I believe that you're looking at 2 or 3 months of work to make that something that could be peer reviewed.
But that's great.
Well, no, that's the MCC, because the MCC is talking about spending serious money on.
The end of the report, Greg has made himself open and available to comments and for issues to be
That was
messaged to him.
not on the agenda. It was not made clear anywhere that comments should be sent to Greg rather than the MCC or discussed
Okay.
here.
This is the one meeting he didn't say it, but okay.
It's been clear.
Okay. This is the first time I've seen that document. It may be there in other meetings, but I haven't seen it. So are comments supposed to be sent directly to Greg? Or are they supposed to be sent to the council?
That's going to Greg.
Good to Greg.
I think Dave raises a point in that we postponed the items to another meeting, but what we didn't do is we didn't give the public enough notice to know that they couldn't provide comment tonight, and probably should have been announced for them to make any comments in a public comment, since it was no longer in the agenda. I don't know what the rules are regarding that.
But
I could have spoken at that point. It was that I agreed it should be pulled, but I didn't agree. I didn't understand that Greg was the one who was taking comments and the council was not voting.
this, we have never formally adopted this report. This is Greg's
I
report.
understand that. I'm thankful for that. If I had realized the agenda item, you guys were gonna spend $3,400 on it, I would have attended that meeting and spoken at that, because I believe that was a complete waste of money.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we now ready to adjourn? Okay, we need to vote on that,
I don't think we have to.
since we're all here.
It was-
Formal adjournment.
Every meeting, we argue about how we adjourn. Can we just get this straight so that we know how to record it in the minutes? 'Cause
Well,
Connie and I
what
are
would
like
you like us to
struggling.
do? Okay, we are adjourned. Nice. Thank you.
Go.